This tutorial starts with a song, but it's only a few seconds long.
Computer animation. Computer animation. Computer animation.
Let's get started with animation. This tutorial starts with text. It adds randomness to the text. Then this tutorial deals with a displacement map on a sphere. This sounds complicated, and in fact it is, but it's really simple as well. Okay, here under polygon modeling you find the T icon. When you press that, you get a text in the scene which is called 3D type. No, we're not interested in this kind of type here, this word, this whatever, and instead we go to, for example, Lucida console and to generator. This is new in Maya 2017 or 18, I don't remember, it doesn't matter. Now we create a generator. It's currently off, we turn it on, and we go to random. And all of a sudden we don't have 3D type, but we have 4 letters R, K, A, Q. We go one step further in the animation to from frame 1 to frame 2. We have a different type font. It's in alphabetical, it's not numeric, this would be numeric. And we could put in a text, which we don't want to do. We're just satisfied with the alphanumeric here. We can just mix numbers and letters. And how many? 4. Or we can have many more. And they change all the time with a frame number. So now we want a whole row of these things. And in order to do this, we can duplicate it. When we duplicate it straight away, which I'll do now by Control D, and move the duplicate down, this happens. The first line is animated, the second one is static. Let's delete it. Let's select it again and go to Edit, and we duplicate Special. We want to duplicate the input graph, which means we want to duplicate this thing with the knowledge what's been done with this thing. So we click here and we apply it. So when we move it down here now, we have the same thing as before, but we have an animation in the second row as well, which is the same as in the first row, which is not really interesting. So let's go to the type tune, as it's called now, and change the seed. It's the random seed now, which starts the random process. We just type in 3, for example, and we have a totally different animation. Now we do the same thing with the third line. Press the key G, which repeats the last command, and move it down here and change the seed to maybe 400. It doesn't really matter. It's the seed is just the starting point of that random function. And we do it again and move the duplicate down here and change the seed to maybe 44. Now we have nice things here. And they're going like these. You can add gravity, anything. You can do so many things with the type fonts, really. Let's go to the front window. It's this one. Press the key A. So we see them all. And now we want to render them. In order to render them, we need a light. We go to Arnold, Light, Skydome Light. When we render it now, we get this. What we want is a black background and white letters. So let's try to do this. The Skydome has different parameters here in the attribute editor. And the one we're interested in is this one, only this one. Under visibility, you find the camera. We don't want the Skydome light as such being visible in the camera view, in this case, but we want its influence on the type fonts. So when we render it now, we get a black background, but the sky dome light works on the letters and makes them gray. So we need to make them white. And in order to get them really white, we just raise the intensity of the sky dome light, like this. When we render it again, we have white type fonts. And now we get a little bit closer to them, like this. And under views, you see the camera settings. We want to see the resolution gate. That's what we're gonna render. Let's get a little bit closer. Now the type fonts fill the whole scene. This is the camera view, the darker gray area here. Now we want to render this sequence here, which goes like this. And for that purpose, we go to the render settings, which are here. And first of all, we don't need camera anti-aliasing because it's so primitive what we're going to render. So let's reduce the camera anti-aliasing to 1, which is really telling Arnold not to think about it a lot. And in the Common tab, we find the file name, which we'll call random numbers in 4 rows. And we don't want them as EXR. I think that wouldn't be a problem, but let's go to PNG, for example. Important frame number extension. We don't want to render a single frame. We want to render several frames. And this can be reached by going to this entry here. We start with a frame 1 and we end with a frame 20. We don't need many really for our purpose here, many frames. And we don't want to render the perspective window, but we want to render the front window. And the resolution is just fine. And then we close this and we go to the render tab here. The render settings in the menu basically, and under render you find render sequence, and check the option box just to make sure that you're actually rendering the front window. And you can choose an alternate output file location, for example in your Dropbox, by clicking on this icon, but I'm fine with this one, and I render the sequence, and now the rendering will be done within just a few seconds. Finished. Now we create a new scene. We don't need this anymore. And in the new scene, we create a sphere. We jump to that sphere by pressing the key F. We need, for a displacement map, we need a high resolution. So we go to this node here, the polysphere 1, and we change the subdivision axis and height to from 20 to 200, which is a far stronger, bigger resolution here. If you type in 500, and by 500 here, Maya will warn you that this may make the app crash because the resolution is too high. Now, right mouse click, New Material, Arnold, Standard Surface Shader, and here we have the color, etc. When we go to the AI Standard Surface Shading group here, we see we have a surface material, which is our surface shader. But here we have the displacement material, and we can click here and choose a file. And that file is now our displacement map, but we haven't chosen a file yet. We need to use this tab for that purpose. And here we can now choose an image name, and we'll choose the image sequence which we just rendered. For that purpose, we need to tick on Use Image Sequence. And now we go to the folder where they are. They are in the rendered images, in the images folders. And here I have the random numbers in 4 rows. We open them. And here in the thumbnail view, you see when you step one step further that they are actually there, but you don't see them right here. So what we can do is now create a light, a sky dome light, just as before, and now we render the scene. And this is the amazing result we get. Of course, we can use viewport rendering like this. We activate it, so that's what we have. We're at step 5 now. When we go one step further, we get a different type selection here. Now the type font is a little bit high. It's very extreme. The original sphere is only this size, and the whole displacement is really drastic. So let's go back to the sphere and go to material attributes. So here we have the file, and the file has a color, black and white in our case, but the alpha gain is the interesting thing. It means the strength of that color difference, white and black. White means letters stick out, and black means they don't stick out. So we can just reduce the color gain to 0.1, for example, and we have this nice arrangement here. Keep in mind, we're rendering here in the viewport. That's why we see the grid, for example. Now we're almost there, and what I want to show you now is this. We go back to the sphere, to the material attributes, to that file here, and here we have a place the 2D texture node. Let's select this just in order to get rid of that green selection here. So when we select the place 2D texture, we have different options here. For example, the repetition in U and V. If we reduce this to 0.1, we get just this distribution here. When we reduce this to 0.1, almost nothing is being displaced here on our object. In order we could reduce the light a little bit, but let's do this later maybe. So we can raise the number from 1 to 10, for example, and then it looks like this. And here as well to 10, so it's kind of proportional. So we have lots and lots of letters now. Let's go a little bit closer to it, like this. And this is a pretty amazing view, isn't it? Next frame, there's frame number 6, is totally different. For example, rotate UV, like this. So you rotate the type fonts. So they rotate it and they're changing frame by frame. You can add noise, so the distribution is more or less random. Say 1, like this. So it doesn't look like type fonts anymore. 0.1. It looks a little bit like type fonts, but it's it does its own thing here. So let's go back to 0. So what we did in this tutorial was we created a random type font and we applied it as a displacement map on a polygon sphere. Have fun with this technique and have a good day. Bye bye.